Toute la France s'enriche avec la prospérité du pays. As the heartland prospers, so too all of France is enriched. With those words, Napoleon acknowledged the empire's dependence on these fields and forests. Before him, the Romans knew it as well, and before them, the Baltic tribes that gave the region its name. The Burgunds brought warriors and weapons to the new land, but its promise of plenty turned them into tillers of soil. To reach the heartland, to know this region in all its natural colors and flavors, we must ride the tide. Nature etched into this landscape three great rivers, the Loire, the Saône, and the Yonne. Henry IV built, Napoleon perfected, a 700-mile system of canals connecting the rivers and directing their flow to the northwest. For there lay Paris, hungry for the timber, granite, and grain of the Burgundy and Nivernais plateaus.
The rivers only run down certain valleys, so they needed to actually go across to the other valley. So the idea of the canal was to connect all of the natural water systems. So the river is flowing actually away from Paris as it happens. The canal system from above actually helped the flow of the water.
Ray Brooks Hyder's skippers, wife Michelle is mistress of gastronomie, student Nicole Beauchamp, and first mate Misty Girl crew the Lanikai, a 100-foot, 6-passenger barge that follows the sun through France every spring, summer, and fall. Kamaina owners Skip and Josie Bressel sought to combine Hawaiian hospitality with French panache. The result, the Lanikai, named after the heavenly waters of Oahu's windward coast, now exploring the equally heavenly waters of France's breadbasket. Our journey reveals the bounty of Burgundy from medieval Clemency to regal Auxerre. When the Lanikai enters port, traffic slows. The lady really knows how to make an entrance. They are famille, family, this small community of riverfolk, constantly moving yet always in touch, independent yet subject to the same vagaries of weather and water flow. Of the riverfolk, none are more respected than the keepers of the locks.
Le bateau rentre dans l'écluse, donc on ferme les portes, le bateau est renfermé dans l'écluse. Ensuite on ouvre les vannes pour que l'eau descende. Et ensuite on rouvre les portes pour laisser sortir le bateau. Et on fait pareil dans l'autre sens.
It's a dependency. I mean, they depend on us. Without the people in boats coming through the locks, there is no job for them. And without them being there, we have no method of actually progressing. And the lock system itself, which has lasted 300 years, nobody has really bettered that idea.
Napoleon standardized the size of all locks, boats, and bridges in France, thusly assuring easy passage of French commercial and military vessels with nary a centimeter to spare. By thinking small, he rendered these waterways useless to the larger boats of invading Germans, English, and Spanish. While the canals have remained unchanged, the world around them reflects a new age of new demands. Trucks and trains now bring goods to the cities. Homes are built and heated without precious timber. The quarries from which Notre Dame in Paris was chiseled are now the playgrounds for weekend climbers. Today, the forest flourishes unmolested. The canals exist solely for our pleasure, and perhaps that's as it should be. Surely we are all meant to have an Eden, real or imagined, where one can still hear the windsong of the poplars and the lap of heavenly waters at river's edge. The River Yonne is both charming and plentiful this fall. Pike, perch, trout, and catfish await the drop of a lure. Today, however, the river yields nothing. The ducks are amused. Perhaps the markets of Clamecy will be more generous.
When I walk around and I see the old houses, this beautiful ancient town, it moves me. I feel so honoured to be able to be here and to walk through this, to see all this past around me and to be in this present time. I'll go to the bakery maybe about 7:45, 8 o'clock, when all the beautiful pastries are starting to come out of the oven. Usually if you go too early you'll only get baguette, but if you go a little bit later you'll get all the wonderful pastries will start coming out of the ovens.
For heartier fare, we go to Les Halles.
Okay, so this is the Saturday market. It's a covered market, so it's called the Halls or Les Halles. This is where the locals come for their produce. Yeah. Oui.
Dans un rôti de porc.
Oui.
Aussi, c'est très bon.
Vous mettez dans le poêle avec du beurre.
Avec du beurre,
Oui.
comme la fourchette aussi.
Oui.
Pareil, hein.
Okay.
The French spend more of their income on food than any other nation. And why shouldn't they?
Merci.
Alors, un vin, s'il vous plaît. Vous en avez combien?
Deux fois comme ça.
Deux fois?
Menu planning en français means coming to market with an open mind and waiting for the wares to stir the senses.
We have the cantaloupe melon and a green melon served with Bayonne ham, which comes from the southwest of France. And to drink, we're having muscat from the muscadet grape, and the common name for the muscadet grape is melon. This is a little goat's cheese, it's a Picardine goat's cheese, which I've melted onto cereal bread, and these are tender young shoots. There are 7 different kinds of baby lettuce there.
And of course, every plate inspires a trip to the Lanikai cellars.
The wine that we're going to start with is Macon Village, which is the appellation. It's a Chardonnay grape and it's a young one, so year 2000.
This is quail roasted and stuffed with sausage meat and blueberries, and served on a bed of blueberry pasta.
The red wine I'm serving is a Beaune Premier Cru, which is the second in the line. It goes Grand Cru, Premier Cru, and then goes down through the appellations.
Like wine, French fromage bears the appellation of its village and purveyor.
Torre de l'Aubier, and that means round cheese that is surrounded with a piece of spruce bark. Then we have the Tome de Savoie, matured for 4 to 6 weeks, low-fat cheese. Gaperon comes from the Auvergne region, cured on a hook by the fire, which explains the tang of smoke. And then we have the Forme d'Ambert, one of the mildest blue cheeses with a smell of the cellar.
Are we finis? Don't be absurd. In France, to fold one's napkin without sampling dessert is a felony, especially when the pickings are perfect right at dockside.
This is Pear William, which has been poached in red wine so that it takes on that lovely deep colour.
A blood red so vivid could only come from the fields of Burgundy. Of all the land's treasures, one harvest has come to represent the richness of the soil and its harmony with the sun. The Cistercian monks were the first to discover the magic in this marriage of grape and earth. Unlike the vineyards of other regions, Burgundian vines are pruned low. By day, the sun heats the shards of chalk in the soil. By night, the stones release their warmth to ward off the Burgundian frost. To retain the heat, the grapes must hang low, close to the earth. What nature produces, the vigneron perfects.
L'histoire de la famille remonte au XVIIe siècle. Je serai la prochaine génération, c'est-à-dire la 4e génération du nom Bersan.
The Bersin et Fils cellars at Saint-Brie-les-Vanneaux have stories of their own to tell. After the Crusades, Franciscan monks carved the underground labyrinth as an escape route in times of war. They were very tiny monks. During the Second World War, the caves hid the family's wine treasures from occupying Germans. The earlier vintages are still undisturbed, roused from mold only for special tastings.
Nous sommes sur plusieurs appellations, principalement sur Saint-Brie, sur laquelle il y a à la fois du Sauvignon, du Chardonnay et de la Ligotée en blanc, et du Pinot Noir pour le rouge. C'est l'appellation Côte d'Auxerre. Mais nous avons également une parcelle du côté d'Irancy, petit village à côté qui fait du rouge, et également à Chablis. Nous avons à la fois les plateaux argilo-calcaires où l'on plante la ligotée et le sauvignon, mais également les coteaux sur lesquels sont plantés le chardonnay pour le blanc et le pinot noir pour le rouge.
The vigneron must adhere to the tradition of eau naturelle. French winemakers are not allowed to heat, irrigate, or chemically fertilize their fields. By law, the product must be free of artificial additives. The sometimes crippling restrictions have allowed French winemakers a measure of arrogance. To work this way, they say, is more difficult, but the wine is alive in the bottle and in the glass, still able to interact with air and temperature. There is a saying in Saint-Brie-les-Vanneaux, pourquoi se mêler des affaires quand le vin est douteux? Why interfere when the nectar is made by the hand of God? The past melds with the present as the Lanikai drifts into medieval landscapes. Maille-la-Vie, Coulanges-la-Vanouse, Châtillon-en-Bazois, the chain of villages along the Nivernais suggest bucolic simplicity, but Burgundy was and still is the most prosperous of French provinces. A country home of the aristocracy lies in the center of nearly every hamlet. The Château de Follin may look like a castle, but it's actually a farmhouse, one of the few remaining fortified farms of the region. Now, what does that mean? It means the major preoccupation of the famille de Follin, when not actually raising crops, was warfare. Dangerous business, farming. The medieval landowner knew all too well the value of his harvest and built his manor house for defense. Today's chateaux have a new enemy, the ravage of time. Since the 16th century, Chateau de Tanlay has been the country playground of European aristocracy. It is still the private home of the current Comte de la Chauvinière. Maintaining such a mansion is costly even for a comte, so the once impeccable grounds are now open to fee-paying visitors. The stables are leased out for public meetings and festivals, and the backyard is now the back nine.
Le golf se développe en France d'une manière générale, y compris en Bourgogne.
En France, golf is becoming much more popular. about 300,000 now play, whereas only 25,000 a decade ago. Of course, here at Tanlay, it is special. I think their Chauvinier ancestors would be pleased that the grounds remain open space, and at the same time, the income helps maintain the chateau.
When old money is not adequate, an infusion of new money can make the difference between ruin and restoration.
This is my home. We initially had a barge and we found this place overlooks the canal, and so it's as though we've not left the place that we've lived on for all those years. You know, obviously we've had to do lots of renovation because over the centuries this place was pretty well smashed up, and so we've spent quite a lot of money and time, you know, renovating various buildings here.
The Roses have learned only year-round rebuttressing and rebuilding keep the 14th century chateau from falling down around their ears.
The fireplace, which I presume was probably back when they had the revolution, you know, and this was all smashed up, so we had this redone.
And on the other side of the chateau, the walls, the almighty walls that go around this place, have got defensive positions with those little areas where you shoot bows and arrows out of, you know, so it was obviously a defensive area, you know, people trying to take over your land, just like today, I guess.
One room, however, is perfect as is. The atelier, or loft, is a haven of inspiration for the Roses, both world-acclaimed artists.
Oh, it's so quiet, there's nobody around, no neighbours. Occasionally the dogs bark, but that's about all.
The automotive series is Stan's, the produce is Avril's.
It's evolved really, with the onions and the leeks. There's a lady down the road, that's why they're called Les Oignons de Madame Bayard, in other words, Madame Bayard's onions, because she let me use them for my painting.
From the battlements, the lord and lady of the manor oversee a valley made fertile and prosperous by the River Yonne. And when a familiar barge moors at their doorstep, it's time for old friends to meet over hot coals and cool wine. The lamb is from Provence, the sausage from Coulanges, the Pinot Noir from Saint-Prix, and the chocolates from Hawaii. The convivialité is taken for granted, a natural consequence when the river brings together wayfarers who share and nurture an affection for all things French. Wild apples growing at Riverside defy the norm, sprouting in duplicate, even triplicate. It is inspiration for tarte tatin, a regional specialty created when the sisters Tatin dropped a pie and discovered the fabulous flip side. It is yet another example of the benefits of laissez-faire, leaving it alone, a philosophy adopted by Burgundian farmers who rely on Providence to watch over their fields.
We live here from generation. We produce sugar beets, also corn. During century, people live along the river, and there was farming here. It was we call propriety, domain.
The Bruneau domain is Le Morillon, a 300-hectare spread of rolling hill and pasture. The Morillon is a regional duck, a bird so lovable Burgundians lent its name to an equally lovable mushroom, and a charming grape of the Pinot Noir family, and now the home of Didier and Françoise Bruneau, who offer bargers a respite from the river in their Mont Saint-Sulpice farmhouse.
The last renovation of this building was at the Napoleon time. They opened a large window. Before, it was short window and was a little more dark. It's very comfortable to live here. It's a great pleasure to receive people from everywhere in the world,
who on this afternoon are hot on the trail of snail.
You go in a little bushes or in a forest and they are long. So it's a very big work, escargot, because you have to clean them, prepare your butter, and you have to peel lots of garlic. So you cry a lot.
The old bread-in-the-mouth trick cuts the sting of shallots diced for a classic Burgundy wine sauce.
So slowly blondir means you get the blonde color. We begin slowly to mix wine and vinegar.
Reasonably reduced, the wine sauce will blanket tornadoes of Charolais beef, served with pommes de terre au gratin, Le Morillon guests this weekend include a businessman from Texas, a mystery writer from Boston, and a teacher from Saudi Arabia. In the 3 hours between starting and parting, the Bruneau table displays the best of Burgundy, the wine, the food, and the hospitality of its residents. Quel dommage, all journeys must come to an end. For this sorrow, Burgundians also wax eloquent. Autant de brume sur la mer que la rosée au soleil matinal. Aujourd'hui, la réalité, demain, la mémoire. On peut mettre ce rêve s'attarder, comme une ombre lointaine.